We're back. Finally. I know, right? It's been over a month. Well, I didn't know that there was a video last week. Otherwise, I would have done it. Yeah, as you can see. Well, actually, you can't see. It was April 8th that this meeting happened. And I didn't even know that it was happening. So I not only have this one, but I have like 3 other videos I have to do now. They should all be done before the end of the weekend. I'm just going to have 4 straight days of videos. Well, let's just get into it. It's Education Committee. I'm sure this is going to be thrilling.
Good evening, everyone. Today is April 7th,
8th?
and it is 5:31. We're in the Public Assembly Room
Whatever.
of the City County Building here for the Education Committee.
Jolly Rancher engaged.
And tonight we have just one presentation, the City Connects program and
Thank God.
partnership
Oh.
with the city supported by ARPA. We have a presentation from Jillian Lane,
American Rescue Plan dollars.
Director of City Connects Midwest for Marian University's Center for Vibrant Schools. We're excited to hear from her. Before we get started, I would love to have the members of the committee introduce themselves, starting with my members on the lower level.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Brian Mowry, District 25.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Josh Bain, District 21.
Loving that jacket, too. I wonder how I would look like in an olive jacket. Am I too brown, maybe? I might be too brown for an olive jacket. But I'm digging it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Carlos Perkins, District 6.
Doctor of Ministry, never forget.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dan Boots, District 3.
Thanks, colleagues. And again, I'm Keith Graves, and I'm absolutely honored to be here as the chair of this committee. I want to welcome everyone, particularly our listeners that are streaming in as we look to hear from Ms. Jillian Lane. Want to remind everyone that our committee is committed to uncovering real stories of education in Marion County. We definitely want to hear stories of progress, but we also want to hear those stories of challenge that are faced by our students and our families as we think about education in our city.
Okay.
We've set a bold goal. I believe that this goal is attainable, and that is that every student in Indianapolis is reading at grade level by the year 2030.
Oh, in 5 years.
Now, that's only 5 short years away, and we know this. But when our city is home to a strong and educated population, we're not just improving test scores, we're building a stronger workforce, we're increasing that civic engagement.
God, this is awful.
And creating healthier, more vibrant communities.
I can't believe Keith Graves is the chair of the Education Committee, because he is not hyping me up at all. It's almost like he's reading something that he wrote down on a napkin.
So for this committee, every presentation counts. Every single one. Every role in education. Tonight's conversation is part of that bigger push to create lasting change for our children, students across Indianapolis. So again, thank you for being here. Ms. Lane, welcome you. And now the floor is yours to present.
Chairman Graves, I just wanted to briefly thank you for allowing Jillian and to speak to the work that they're doing. My name is Shana Cavazos. I'm the Director of the Office of Education Innovation. And briefly, I'll pass it off to Jillian in just a moment, but I'm really excited to...
Of course, another fat liberal chick. Every time.
Have you all hear about...
Under my administration, there will be no more fat people. That's a promise.
City Connects and the Connect Indy dashboard. And I also just wanted to thank the other partners who we've worked with, because you're going to hear a lot of really compelling, innovative information, but it really took a lot of different groups to get here. So just Briefly, really wanted to thank Marian University Center for Vibrant Schools and also Boston College's Mary E. Walsh Center for Thriving Children, which is where City Connects was born more than 20 years ago. And I want to thank you, members of the City County Council, and also Mayor Joe Hogsett, for allocating the American Rescue Plan funding that brought City Connects to Indianapolis, allowed us to support, in particular, about a dozen schools on the Far East Side, and also build the Connect Indy dashboard. We are very much looking forward to seeing what kind of impact this will have on our education system and on our children. And now you'll hear all the really interesting things from Jillian Lane, Executive Director of Integrated Student Support and Center Strategy for the Center of Vibrant Schools at Marian University.
Thanks, Director.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I want to share a little bit about what City Connects is, and then I'll share a little bit about the scope of the project in partnership with OEI. So as Shana mentioned, City Connects was established by Boston College about 25 years ago, and it's an integrated student support model. So it's really all about bringing in a system in which to deliver student support to schools, and City Connects is really for any school and serves all students in that school. And so we mentioned the Center for Vibrant Schools. We actually launched City Connects as a part of the launch of the center in 2021. The Department of Ed provided us with some learning loss funds to kind of launch the City Connects work across the state, and then the investment from the city through the ARPA funds was a really big part of the additional expansion, and those schools are actually still working with us and are wrapping up the school year. And several of those schools that were mentioned, those 12 East Side schools, have sustainability funding through our partnership as well, but we're always looking to kind of expand those partnerships. Currently, we're serving about 25 to 30 schools in Indianapolis specifically. Those are non-public schools, public schools, and charter schools, and we're projecting some expansion in 26, 27 as well. Particularly because of some of the Eli Lilly funds that were put out there for the K-12 schools. We have several districts and standalone schools that are looking to implement City Connects as a part of that partnership as well, which is very exciting. So if we could go to the next slide. So the main component and kind of premise of what City Connects is all about is impacting out-of-school factors. Students spend most of their time outside of school, and so in order to serve students in school,
You don't say.
need to take into consideration what they're experiencing outside of the school building. So things like,
Why is that your problem, though? That's what I've been trying to figure out. Like, hey, guess what? Someone probably has a fucked up home life. But my roads are still messed up. I don't know if you know this or not, but people are having their tires blown out. So if a parent is struggling for food or struggling making ends meet, and then their tire gets blown out, do you not think that that's going to make things even worse? So how about Indianapolis focus on that?
family, housing insecurity, food insecurity. I mean, we can throw a million interventions at a student, but if they aren't having their basic needs met, they're never going to achieve academically. And so City Connects really brings this kind of to life in a systematic approach at the school level. So if we could go to the next slide. Let's go to the next one. Sorry, I forget about these transitions. Keep going. Okay. So being that City Connects was born out of Boston College, it was born out of their school counseling program. So it's all based in developmental science. And so really it's all about understanding the fact that every student is unique, their life circumstances are unique, and that they are always developing over time. So City Connects really takes into account, how students are changing over periods of time, but also making sure that they're getting the right intervention at the right time and for the right duration of time. And I think the other unique piece of this practice as well is that it's strength-based. So we're looking at both strengths of students to then capitalize on those strengths and address the needs of that student as well. If you could click forward again. So as mentioned, it's a comprehensive model. And so in a lot of cases, we're looking at academic challenges, maybe certain diagnosis or social emotional behavioral challenges, but
SEL is what they're talking about, which is the dumbest thing ever. If you want to know one of the top reasons of why public education is failing or education in general is failing, it's SEL.
Connects has a much more holistic approach to the model. So when we're talking about creating an individualized support plan for every student, we're looking at these 4 domains. So you'll see the 4 circles there. So we are looking at academics and social, emotional, behavioral, but we're also looking at health and family. So it's bringing a more varied conversation to the table where it might not be as holistic as you would traditionally see. I think the other piece about the City Connects practice is
I can't even tell you how much that drives me up the wall when I hear somebody say holistic. It is the most annoying thing ever.
Also based on identifying tiers of interventions. So we're looking at the types of interventions and the intensity level of those interventions to help identify how we can best support those students. And I'll talk a little bit more in a minute about how this practice looks on the ground to give it a little bit more of a tangible feel. So if we could go to the next slide. So as mentioned, it's a systematic approach. It's utilizing a full-time City Connect site coordinator, which that is a master's level social worker or school counselor. Some of the schools we partner with will utilize an existing counselor or social worker in the building and use this framework as a way in which their role is done, essentially. And then some schools opt to bring in a new staff person. So there's just kind of that's kind of where the individualization from the school perspective can come into play. And then those master's level credentials are really important because they're doing clinical type decision making as a part of determining what interventions students are receiving. So that credentialing is really important. And then I mentioned, the tiering of services. So they'll look at applying Tier 1 interventions, which are going to be prevention and enrichment, Tier 2 interventions, such as early intervention, and then crisis interventions, which we would categorize as a Tier 3 intervention. Next slide. So the other piece of this is return on investment. So this slide shares a little bit about that, which I don't want to go too far into the weeds. I'll just kind of give an overview of the explanation as to how these kind of numbers come about. But essentially, it's the idea that one of the core components of the City Connects coordinator role is not just connecting students and families with interventions that the school provides, but also connecting students to interventions in the community where there are already existing services from community agencies.
You're a glorified middleman.
And so this is where this ROI starts to come into play because the site coordinator is able to leverage several more services into the school that would not have been realized without the City Connects coordinator and the City Connects practice. And so it's really all about being able to leverage more dollars into the school by connecting students to services that are existent in the community.
What the hell are you talking about? It produces $3 in benefits. So there's no actual tangible money then. There's no physical okay, we put $1 in, it's like an investment, right? I give you $1, and then when the investment pays off, I get $3. It's not, though. It's just woogie boogie man of, you give me $1, and I'll benefit over $3. Okay, this means if a City Connects were widely implemented, blah, 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 blah. Hold on. I found that if it produces $3 in benefits for every $1. Okay, but how do you measure that? Okay, what study are you talking about? Seems like this is just another scam. It's another scam for some middle management bullshit.
Next slide.
What a bunch of crap.
So that's a little bit about what City Connects is, how it works, and I'm happy to field more questions about that if you all have them. But I really want to spend a little bit more time on the Connect Indy dashboard, which was the other facet to the partnership that we had with the city. And so the Connect Indy dashboard is really the first of its kind. Boston College, like I said, has been doing this work for 20-some years. Never have they brought the data of the City Connects practice into an externally facing platform. And so I always kind of like to say that this data gives you a sense of the type of data that schools are gathering, but it's kind of like the light version of that because obviously a lot of this data is going to be much more aggregated than what schools have access to, but it gives you a sense of the type of data that then school administrators and even district leaders can then use this type of data to inform systems level decisions, school level decisions, grade level decisions, things like that.
What the fuck are you talking about, lady? Look at our big dashboard.
So essentially, the dashboard is
Hold on.
an
I
online platform
gotta
that
find this.
makes this data publicly available.
Yeah, I
Really,
gotta
the
find it.
intention is all about educating the public on the types of services that are being utilized, but also the gaps in services, and also what students are interested in, and the types of needs and gaps in services that might bubble up because of the data that we're collecting. This slide just kind of shows a snapshot of the homepage, shares a little bit about what City Connects is, some high-level data points, and these were snapshots from a few months ago, so this might not reflect exactly on the web page, but just want to share a little bit about what this kind of the landing page looks like. If you can go to the next slide. So here's another example of what you can find on the dashboard. So you'll see student interests here, what students are most interested in. I will note that students can select multiple interests. So this data isn't like a one-to-one kind of.
Top needs, reading, math, attention and focus, writing. So all of the above, attendance. Hey, you know what I'm really good at clothing, relationship skills, personal care. The top interest of a kid, of a student, is video games, then art, then basketball. Boy, you know.
Kind of alignment with the student, but it does give you a sense of what students are really interested in. So this not only can inform, from a philanthropy standpoint, where should philanthropy invest its dollars, what types of programs are students interested in, but it also could help inform community agencies.
You're going to listen to some child, by the way, of, hey, you know what? Kids really like video games, so we should totally invest into more video game platforms. Not, hey, the kid really likes video games, but he can't read worth a shit. We got this 8-year-old, 10-year-old who can't even read at a kindergarten level. But hey, you know what? Let's do video games.
And in a few slides, you'll see we have a kind of a heat map too. So it's not only about understanding what interests are high, but then organizations that might serve a very specific community or zip code or zip codes can then use that as a way to identify more specified types of information about a very specific community in which.
Anybody that's watching this, can you tell me about 21st Century Scholar? I hear about it, but I have no idea. Am I too old? Is that why? Or is it because I didn't go to school in Indy? I'm very confused on what it is.
The students are going to school. And then you can see a little bit about the strengths and needs.
Was it because I knew what I was going to do for the rest of my life when I was like, I don't know, a sophomore in high school? Hold on. Okay, if it's for college and career, okay. That's cool, I guess. I don't know.
Needs of students. And so
not mocking it, I'm just trying to figure out what
there might be a strength that is the same as the need. And I think in my eyes, that just speaks to the disparities that we sometimes see in schools, that, uniform and clothing might be a strength for a lot of students, but it's also a need for a lot of students. And so I think that is one of the ways that you might decipher why there are strengths and needs that are the same in both columns.
Rooted school.
And we can go to the next slide. And then this will show a little bit of the breakdown of the types of services. So you'll see in the pie chart, just kind of to explain a little bit of the nuances and kind of the decision making that we made. You'll notice that 3 of the 4 domains are in that pie chart. Obviously, categorizing family as a strength or a need could be misunderstood, and so we decided to take that out of the mix. And then
hold on. You guys can probably barely see it. Let me bring it over. Extracurricular learning. Okay, you can see it. Family, conference meeting, youth development, health screening, donations, percentage of students. Okay. Extracurricular learning. What is that? Teaching language, special education, mentoring, ELL, college and career planning. But mostly like literacy, basic family needs, donations, health. So basically, you have a shitty family. What it sounds like to me.
Add in more specified strengths and needs because we didn't want to have that be perceived in a negative fashion. So
Hold on.
this will kind of show you the breakdown of the types.
Holy shit, it's so funny. Hold on. I was just going through Twitter real quick. And there was a post today, or was it yesterday? I don't know, or a day or two ago. Good for districts 12 and 13. Jesse Brown and Andy Nielsen were honored to join the groundbreaking. Not a single like. Fuck them both.
Of services that are most utilized. Seeing the equal distribution in that pie chart is not unusual, and we would probably expect that to be more, it might move a little bit year to year, but it would probably be pretty evenly distributed to be expected. If you go to the next slide. And again, a little bit more data, a little bit more of a snapshot of what you can see on the dashboard itself. I want to go to one more slide. If you could go to the next one. Perfect. So within the dashboard as well, you can see all of the different schools that are participating in the City Connects program. You can actually, we have 2 years of data in the dashboard thus far, so you can toggle between this 2022, 23, and 23, 24. We'll be uploading the 24, 25 data this summer, so it's an annual update. It's unfortunately not like living and breathing on a day-to-day basis, but it is an annual update. So you can see on the school profiles, you can go back and forth between the different school years. You can see the grade levels that are served by City Connects, as well as the grade levels just that are served from the school itself, and the years of their implementation. And then you can see some additional information about the student bodies that they serve. And if you can go one more slide. And then this is the heat map that I was referring to. So this is an interactive map that will show the community agencies that are partnering with City Connect schools and our services that are utilized several times. And so when you go into those school profiles, you can then start to explore from the map function, as a community agency, what are the strengths and needs of students, what are those interests, and then how might that agency use that information to inform the types of programming that they offer. So I think the intention is that utilizing the systematic approach in the school to then hopefully inform more systems level decision making at the community level as well, to ensure that, it takes a village to support students, and so we want to make sure that the information is available to those individuals that are making those decisions around supporting students in Indianapolis. And I think that's my last slide. Oh, a little bit about the implementation and sustainability. So a little bit about the numbers. If we think about the general cost of implementing City Connect, so there is a licensing fee, and that goes to support kind of the general implementation costs. So there's professional development that's provided, implementation tools, the use of a cloud-based software system. So all of those individualized student support plans are kind of living, breathing documents that are held electronically. So, and that system, which is, I think, really nice,
130. 140 at the very most cost per school. As a glorified middleman.
City Connects is an evidence-based program, so we're always looking at fidelity and looking at the general implementation best practices, and so that licensing fee goes towards the coaching and support of those schools to ensure fidelity of implementation, obviously driving outcomes that we would hope to see. And then there is a technical assistance center cost, so this is kind of supporting the coaching capacity of the human capital that goes towards coaching, so additional social workers and school counselors that are providing support to those working in the schools, and then the site coordinator themselves, a full-time employee, so that just kind of gives you a range of generally what that FTE would cost. Next slide. And so that's a little bit about the costs for implementation, and then the cost and sustainability for the website itself. Thankfully, the funding through the city and OEI was incredibly helpful. The upfront costs were really the big part of what the expense was. So the ongoing maintenance is much, much less. So it's really looking at just the annual update of the data each year. Just the cost to host and own the domain and website. There is a little bit of software renewal that we need as a part. We use Power BI to house the dashboard, so that's just another expense that we take on. And then again, ongoing improvements. We always want to, I think, as soon as we were done with like launching the project, we were immediately talking about like how can we make it better and make it more user friendly and make sure that the information that we're putting out is actually usable and interesting to the folks that are using it and applicable. So there will always be kind of that ongoing development. At least that would be our hope. So this just gives you a sense of, we kind of had the upfront launch costs, and this was the estimated cost that we would expect year over year to keep it going. Next slide. Yep. Okay, great.
Shayna, hold on. Who is, okay, so Jillian Lane, that's who we got to figure out first. We got to go Shayna Havavavos. It was us. Oh, that's Jillian Lane. That's actually, you know what? Not that yeah, okay. What was she doing before? Oh, she was reporter for Chalkbeat. Holy shit. She covers state education policy, and now she's the director of the Office of Education Innovation. Jeez. Unbelievable. Would she do this? Oh, I gotta check out her timeline. So funny. She was a Columbia, Missourian. A teacher? How old is this? Man eater. Counselor for Camp Tikva Day Camp. Reporter. He worked for The Gap nearly 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Teacher of Congregation Bet Shalom. Oh, she's Judaistic studies in 5th graders in Hebrew. Interesting. Then was in Columbia, Missouri, then Cleveland, Akron, then back to Missouri, and then now she's in Indianapolis. And now she's part of Office of Education Innovation. Well, that's not going to go well. So fucking... All right, so who's this? Jillian Lane. I want to find... You know why I'm doing this, right? Because I want to know, how did you get to this position? How much cock did you suck? Is this the chick? Yeah. What did you do before? Okay, so you Marian University, then University of Indianapolis, and then you're a yoga instructor. Oh, you're currently a yoga instructor. Okay, so wait a minute. You are part of the Arthritis Foundation, 7 years ago. And then you were part of a while 15. Okay, so while you're you were at University of Indianapolis at the same time that you were working for the Arthritis Foundation. Damn, this chick has history. Part of KIB too, grassroots, Portland, Oregon. Okay, so she's a big fucking leftist. At Marian University too. That is kind of crazy. It just shows like how Marian University is totally compromised.
Again, I'm happy to field questions. I know it was a lot of information.
Yeah, that was a lot.
Yeah.
But it was good. It was extremely
It
helpful. Just super surprised to see some of the information that you guys presented today. I want to give my colleagues on the council, on the committee here, an opportunity to ask questions.
Okay.
Go right ahead, Councilor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was looking at the dashboard and the heat map while you were talking, and I think I've personally found the answer to a couple of these, but for the public benefit. So when you have these individualized support plans and then the tier services, could you describe like what would an example of that look like?
Yeah, so like an example of a plan, essentially? Yeah. So the way that it works, one of the things I didn't include is kind of the process in which these plans are created. So the City Connects coordinator meets with every teacher in the school to talk about each of their students. And so, it's a 5 to 7 minute conversation talking about those 4 domains. So it's a really kind of qualitative type of discussion where they're just trying to understand, like, what are you seeing in the classroom? What do you know about home life? So it's really kind of anecdotal, but then they supplement that with student information system data, grade data, behavioral data, all of that fun stuff. And so
all that
then
fun
when they're
stuff.
sitting down together, the site coordinator's bringing kind of the systems level data, and then the teachers being able to layer on their perspective and what they've observed. So the plan is then created based on that information. As you know, some students have more complex situations that warrant more intensive conversations. And so in that case, that's where we're bringing together a multidisciplinary team. So it could be principal, the site coordinator, maybe there's another school counselor, social worker in the building, but it also could be teacher, maybe soccer coach that knows the student really well. So they're bringing together everyone that knows something about that student to come up with a more intensive plan that has SMART goals and measurable outcomes. And then all plans are evaluated every 6 to 8 weeks. So in terms of the content of that plan, it would go through each of those 4 domains and look at strengths or needs in each of those areas. So for example, a strength could be math, and a need could be attention in class or persistence. And then if you're looking at family, it could be something around like basic needs, but it also could be around have a hard time communicating, or there's a language barrier, or family is extremely engaged, and that's one of their strengths. So within each of the 4 domains, there are like different toggle buttons that coordinators can choose from. So they're kind of clicking strengths and needs. They're not clicking all of them, right? Because that doesn't apply. Not all students have a strength and need in all of
She is not doing a good job explaining this whole thing.
those areas. But they are also keeping notes as well. So if there's something really specific to a strength, it's like, mom is best reached on her cell phone. Like they're collecting just little things like that. Because I think the biggest intention is that this is a preventative approach. I think schools so often are, kind of putting out the fires as they come up. But because every student is getting a plan every year, schools know a lot more about their students. Teachers know a lot more about their students. And so if a crisis happens, schools are much more able to adapt and address it because they have so much more information about their students. So a long-winded answer, but there you go.
Not really an answer at all.
So in the, you have in the presentation here the 193 service providers. How does, well, I guess for the benefit of everybody, if you can just talk about a couple of the key service labels used, and then how does one become a service provider, and then in this individualized support plan, how do you partner the student with one of these organizations for that specific need?
Yep, great question. So the way that providers are coded is like written into the program manual. So just to make sure for consistency, we're like everyone's following kind of the same rule of thumb. And so I can share with you as follow-up kind of how those are determined. I will say that in the Connect Indy website, it is a little bit more simplified than it is in the system, just for the sake of public use. And then in terms of how providers are identified, it's really up to the coordinator to identify those services. And that happens in a couple different ways. I think one of the things that's unique, and oftentimes I get asked, how do you determine who's going to partner with City Connect schools? And it's like, it's not our decision to decide who is partnering with us. It's about the service provider that's providing the right service to that family. And so it's really about the individualized match to the student and family. And so there's a couple of different ways. I mean, coordinators are, like I said, they're social workers and counselors, so they kind of know how to vet community agencies and programs, but then also the MyConnect system. So for example, the 20-some schools in Indianapolis, they're all contributing to the MyConnect system, so they all get access to the same providers. So they end up talking to each other. So even if it's a school that's in a completely different district but is in metropolitan Indianapolis, they will talk to each other about, hey, I saw that you used the YMCA at Avondale, and I saw that they have a swim program. Like, is that a good swim program? What? Has that person been really responsive to your emails? So they talk and vet providers that way too, just by word of mouth. But it's not really our role to kind of vet them. It's really all about the individualized connection to the student and family that is how they're determined. And then there was a third part to your question, I think.
It was more like the service labels used, like just the categories of service, just some of the big ones maybe.
Yeah, so they're oftentimes broken down by those different domains. So it'll be there'll be an academic, but it could be tutoring. It could be academic, but after-school programming. So those are some examples. It also could be family services. It could be clothing, housing, food, but it also could be job fairs or job preparation or resume building. So each of the different domains have their own subcategories, I guess. And so
This chick is just fucking yapping. It's just yapping. Hey, how do we just get children to read and do math better? That's all. That's all we want to do.
So yeah, I can share a little
Man,
bit
I
more
miss
about
the
that.
90s.
But those are just some of the ones that kind of come off the top of my head.
Okay, final one, I promise.
Yeah.
So I know that you've been focused on the east side. Have you? Is this a pilot, or have we offered other districts or schools in Marion County this program? If you have, what has their feedback been? And I guess if not, what does that expansion look like?
Yeah, so we are in a handful of IPS schools, some of the innovation schools, and a handful of charter schools. We have a couple non-public schools. But overall, I think the feedback has been really positive in that there's a couple different things. I think one is it takes a little while for this to become embedded, right? It's bringing a new system, a new way of doing business for student support into a school. And so what we found is that after kind of that year 2 hump, when there's a lot of data in the system, administrators start to really be able to see the data and be able to utilize it from a higher level perspective. I think one of the things we see too is that social workers and school counselors are often it's kind of like, this is the roadmap that I've been looking for, because a lot of times they're entering in a school and kind of developing their own systems and processes. And so this gives them a pathway in which to do that. And also because it is evidence-based, they can kind of rely on the backbone of it, that they know that they're doing good for kids. So I think that's another big piece. But I mean, it is a systems change, and that takes time, and it can be bumpy. And so I think the schools that are bought in and ready to stick with it and move through that process to embed it really reap the benefits of it.
Thank you.
Council.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for your presentation tonight. This sounds like a great program. Just a couple quick questions. With respect to Councilor Cahill's comments about the service providers, so the 193 that are shown or listed here, are they part of a certified database, if you will, or do they get a stamp of a housekeeping approval by City Connects, or is it just you guys kind of your hands off on the service providers, and so there's not a list of the 193 that someone can be sent?
Yeah, so on the website, in the heat map, below the map is an actual list of all those providers. So yeah, all that information is publicly available. I think we rely on the social workers and counselors in the schools to kind of give the City Connect stamp of approval, because they're the ones that are connecting with students and families that are utilizing those services. And so we don't have a formal vetting process, but we rely on the clinicians in the schools to do that. But from a data perspective,
there's only so much hand holding that you can do when you finally just tell the parents, hey, guess what? It's time to act like a fucking adult.
Each school is assigned a program manager. That's the one that kind of supports the coordinator and
That's
does the
all
coaching
this is, just
on the
glorified
implementation and
middlemen,
fidelity of the practice.
Glorified hand-holding.
Part of their role is to ensure that the data that is in the system is accurate and up to date and all of that. So there is a level of checks and balances that happen, but from the programmatic standpoint, we're really relying on the school level clinicians to determine those things.
And are the service providers required to provide confirmation that all the people who have access to children have gone through criminal background checks?
That's not something that we manage or oversee. That's a good question, but it's not an element of the core components of the practice that we provide.
We don't care if we have a bunch of pedophiles on staff.
Okay. Final question, if I may. You mentioned that the schools were public, non-public, and charter. How would you just define non-public?
A private school, religiously affiliated.
Private or religious. And roughly what's the breakdown between those three buckets?
Maybe 5% is non-public or private. The remaining are either charter or traditional public school.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Counselor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Director Lane, for the presentation. I will admit I was having a bit of a hard time following what the program actually is, but I think some back and forth with Councilor Cahill and Councilor Boots helped clear that up for me.
Yeah, what exactly do you do?
How do you measure the success of this program?
Fucking great question. Great question by Josh Bain, as usual. Listen, at the end of the day, he's still my favorite counselor. He should have been leader of the city of the minority, not Michael Paul Hart.
Yep, great question. So we are literally in the throes of an outcomes evaluation. So since we launched in 2021, we've just frankly been too early in implementation to look at outcomes. So we're in progress of having a formal outcomes evaluation done by Boston College. But I can speak to some early indicators. So one of, we know chronic absenteeism has been a big priority, especially over these last couple of years, especially since COVID. And so in our City Connect schools that implemented City Connects for 2 years, they saw an average of a 13% decrease in chronic absenteeism, which the state saw 3% average across the state. So we're seeing a big impact there. Obviously, that's kind of like the low-hanging fruit. It's the first piece that's oftentimes impacted, but we are seeing a much higher rate of decrease there. If we're looking at more of a longitudinal study, which Boston College did in Boston Public Schools. And this is in our outcomes evaluation, these are types of things that we'll be kind of inquiring and measuring. And so...
Smash or pass? You think I forgot about that?
They saw, again, improved attendance, improved test scores,
better thank you.
Grades. But then longitudinally, long-term, students that received City Connects in grades 1 through 5 were more likely to graduate high school, more likely to attend and complete college or a certificate program. So I think that's really powerful. It's, even at receiving services at the elementary level, they're seeing really strong longitudinal outcomes as well. And so that's kind of like what we're hoping we'll see some of those kinds of outcomes as well. But we're just a little baby implementation in Indiana right now, so we're just not quite there yet.
So when do you expect that outcomes evaluation to be completed?
It should be in 2026, so by next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I'm just looking online, some of your funding sources, or at least the blog and everything. You guys get a plethora of grants and all that, so I would imagine you wouldn't keep getting those if it wasn't working. But what does your current budget breakdown look like? Do you get most of your funding through federal grants, state grants, foundations? What does that look like?
Yeah, it's all of the above. So like I said, we launched under some state funding originally, and then with the partnership with the city, those were kind of our big pilot projects. So from there, we've received some federal funding through the USDOE, which we've been really successful and hopefully stays that way.
No, end it. Kill it. Get it over with.
And then we also have philanthropy. So we have some partnerships with 3 or 4 philanthropic organizations that we're working with as well. So we're always kind of trying to diversify, but then the schools are actually also putting in some funds too. So one of the things that we've done is factored in a step-down approach. It's kind of, we fund up front to get things up and going, and then we step down the funding over time so that the schools are slowly absorbing the costs, hopefully moving towards sustainability. So we're in the throes of that step-down model as we speak, this upcoming school year is when it'll be, I think, 50-50. So that will really kind of be our test, I guess.
Great.
Great.
Just a quick comment. Can we invite you back in
Sure.
26 when we have the out?
I would love
Because
to.
I think we'd really like to see those results.
Absolutely. I would love to share them.
You know what? Most of these like committee meetings are about, all right, what are you doing, and why should we give you money? Because it sounds like this program is mostly funded through taxpayer money, your money. So while you're having this lady get paid X amount of dollars to be in some middle management role, to be now we're going to talk about it here in a second.
Yeah, I was at the
Your roads are fucked up.
The announcement a few years back over at a school on the east side. Can you talk a little bit about Marian University's involvement?
Sure. So Marion had been in conversation with Boston College for several years about bringing City Connects to Indianapolis. Years before my time at the university, they tried to implement at a couple of schools, but didn't build the infrastructure internally that was needed to support the program. And so because of the learning loss funds, we're able to do that in a much more intentional way. And so essentially, our partnership with Boston College, they're still, the owners and intellectual property owners of the City Connects practice, but they kind of serve as our coach. So we serve almost as like a boots on the ground technical assistance provider in Indiana, so that, because we know that doing that at a distance just doesn't work, and the context is so different. So having folks from Indiana, from Indianapolis supporting the schools is really important. So we're really supporting the day-to-day operations of the implementation of City Connects, and then Boston College is kind of overseeing to make sure that we are doing that with fidelity, and then it's kind of like that trickle down where we're supporting the schools with fidelity as well. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
And do you know how many schools across the country or systems or cities that City Connects is found in?
Yeah, so Indiana, we have about 60 schools this year across the whole network, so nationwide. And then they actually launched a national center in Dublin, Ireland a couple of years ago as well, which they are planning to expand into every school in Ireland, I believe. So that's obviously a long-term plan, but I think that investment is really interesting. So across the U.S., for the whole network, I want to say around 150 or 200 schools. So Indiana makes up a really big piece of the network.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Well, I certainly appreciate the presentation, Ms. Lane. And if there are no other questions, Chair will entertain a motion.
So moved.
There you go. Boom,
We are
biggity bang.
adjourned.
Thank you.
All right, so I wanted to take just a quick look. I know we're already over time, but we're all right. This is what I mean. Like, it's basically a middle management. Okay, so we're going to do a full student review, right? And then we're going to say, hey, this is your proposed plan and tier. The families, talk to the families, talk to the community partners, and then you get a tailored support plan for every student. I'm dead serious when I tell you this right now. I miss when there was accountability from the parents. I miss when it was like, hey, guess what? My kid isn't doing well in math or in reading. What's going on? Oh, we're going to have to break this down by the most minute, ridiculous thing, including social, emotional learning. Oh, what's going on here? Maybe he just needs some food. Maybe. Maybe he has bad parents. Maybe. Or maybe you're just not teaching him properly. Maybe you should probably have him get off the video games. It is very interesting to watch, though, right? Once iPhones became more popular, once the tablets got way cheaper, it's reading and science and math all took a huge dip. And now you're having to come up with all these elaborate programs to say, hey, you know what? Actually, we just need to focus on his feelings. Instead, it's like, no, we're going to put you in the boo box if you aren't reading properly. And if you don't fix your shit, we're going to deport you. That's all you have to do, really. You need to have like a scared straight plan. Like, hey, if you don't do good, we're going to put you in prison where you're going to get your shit pushed in. Maybe it's a little bit harsh, but you're really not going to do it. You just have the threat of them doing it. But anyway, all right. All right, until next time.